Now for the part 2 of the transmission removal. So the only thing that we have to do now is to remove all the transmission bolts that holds the transmission mount. We need to take this one out too later. And let me show you on the top part of the engine, we have a couple of bolts that we need to take out. So we have one here, that bolt right there, this one where my finger is pointing, and then we have another one here. We have another one on that side. Not sure if I can get an angle for that one. So you have two on top of the engine, and then you also have one here towards under here. You also have this a dust shield that you have to remove. They are 14 and a 10 millimeter, and the rest of the bolt sizes for the transmissions are 17. So that's under the transmission. And then after that, you also have this one, that, and then you have 1, 2, 3, and at the very top 4. So you have 4 bolts that holds the transmission towards that bracket at the back. So those are the bolts that we need to take off. Another thing to remove also, so we can have a better clearance from the top bolt right there. From that top bolt is to remove this bracket that is bolted to the lower section of the block, to the bottom side of the intake manifold. We need to take this one out too, and I believe this is a 12 and another 12 millimeter up top. So these are the two first things that we might need to take off. Now we're getting ready to remove that bracket. It's held by two 12 millimeter. Let me see if I can get you an angle to that side. There you go. So this is the very first bolt that you want to take out. Once you remove the bracket, it will not totally be off because it's still held by several wire looms that are attached to it, but it's good enough so we can move it and we can have a better clearance. Lower shield of the transmission. And then these are the bolts that we need to take out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Two 10 millimeter bolts that we need to take out is this one at the very bottom and one here. And once you remove all the bolts that holds this in place, this one will just go right down and it will expose our flywheel. Now we're ready to remove the 4 bolts that holds the transmission against that rear bracket. And that will be the fourth bolt. After removing all the 4 bolts to this rear bracket, now we'll be starting to remove this guy. This bolt is from the engine going to the transmission. The next bolt that we're going to be removing after that would be this bolt under clutch slave cylinder. That's that bolt. Then after taking all the bolts here at the bottom side of the transmission, I think we're ready to take the bolts on top of the transmission. After removing the bolts at the bottom of the transmission, now we have to remove 2 bolts on top. This is the first one and the second one. Both of them are also 17 millimeters. These are the 2 bolts that came out from the top end. And this is the simplest way that you can index your transmission bolt. So this 2 here goes to the top of the engine side, or the transmission, top of the transmission. This one is the very top of the rear bracket. 2 on the mids, 1 at the very bottom is the shortest one. This one bolts in from the engine to the transmission, and this one is under this clutch slave cylinder, bolts in from the transmission to the engine. And then after supporting your transmission, we're now ready to remove 3 of the nuts that hold this transmission bracket and transmission mount. So you have 1, 2, and the third one would be that guy. Now we're ready to remove this bolt. That is a 17 millimeter as well. And now you can remove the transmission bracket. Ready to drop the transmission down. Now the transmission is almost out. The only thing that we have left to do is to fully drop the transmission and pull it off towards the front. And if you're following this video so far, that's how you take out the transmission. And let's see what we have here. The throwout bearing is shot. This one definitely needs to be replaced. And that's the other part of the diaphragm of the pressure plate. And we'll have to clean the transmission and some of the engine bay. Now what we're about to do is to clean up this transmission. Now we're using purple power. Yep, and we just have to spray it down to let it soak for a bit. While our transmission is drying out under the sun, now it's time for us to remove the clutch, and make sure that you also remove the dowel pins. We still have one left in the engine, and the other one is already, it's still attached to the transmission, but I'm gonna remove them and replace them too. And now we will be removing the pressure plate, 6 bolts that is holding it into place. So this is our clutch assembly. We have here our clutch. It's already chewed down to the metal. So that's our clutch. Man, it's all gone. And this is our pressure plate. Out this flywheel off, so I can replace the rear main seal, which is a seal behind this flywheel. In order to get to that seal, I have to take this out. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8 bolts, which are 17mm 12-point bolts that we're about to remove. And that's your flywheel. And this is your rear main seal. This guy. And we will replace that too. We're gonna be using for the rear main seal. Okay, so these are the sets that I have for the clutch. I have the one on top would be the XCD stock spec, and then the one at the bottom is an XTD one. With the flywheel, you have the small hole that line up with the small nipple at the back, so it will not go anywhere. It will lock it in place. We will be using Loctite on all the bolts and torque it down to 76 foot-pounds. So that's one. So after wiping the surface, the instruction for the clutch says to add, we're also using Honda grease to the center of this bearing. Okay, now we're mating our clutch disc to the flywheel. For now, we're just mounting one of the bolts so it can hold it in place. As long as you have your tool inserted like that, you should be okay. You want to set your torque wrench to 19 foot-pounds. That's it. That's how you install your pressure plate, clutch, clutch disc and the flywheel. Our transmission has been drying under the sun, so she looks cleaner than what it used to. If you are following this video, that's how you replace your clutch on a Honda Prelude. I will be also doing a part 3 of this video, probably a time lapse when I'm ready to put everything back together. So it will be just a reverse order of what we've done so far. And for more DIY videos, like and subscribe. Thank you.